Join us on a captivating journey as we explore the charm, history, and vibrant culture of Wilkes County. Discover the hidden gems, inspiring stories, and remarkable people that make Wilkes a place worth knowing and celebrating. Join us now and experience the unique essence of Life in Wilkes.
Larry Klein, welcome to Life in Wilkes.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here.
Well, I really am happy that you're able to sit down with us today because you're not in Wilkes all the time. You visit once a year, right?
Correct.
And you bring 100 of your best pals.
We do.
And you camp out over, well, not camp out, but you set up headquarters at the convention center over at the Holiday Inn Express,
correct.
Right?
That's correct.
So now that everyone is full of suspense and wondering what in the world is he talking about, tell folks why you come every year.
Well, we have what we think is the largest gathering of folks who play the resonator guitar, also known as the Dobro. Right. And we can talk a little about the distinction and the history of that. If increasingly over the last few years people know what the instrument is, right. But if you don't know what the instrument is, I can guarantee you've heard it. You've walked through the store and you've heard one on the speakers, or you've heard it in a song, and you might have even said, what is that beautiful instrument? And it's our Dobro or resonator guitar.
Well, let's talk about why that's different, because I think you're right. Everybody's going, oh, that's a Dobro. That's a Dobro, for those who would know. And people in Wilkes County have a good ear for music. You know,
Indeed,
they have a lot of things happening here.
One of the reasons we're here is because of that.
Is that right?
Yes, because this is an area rich in music, and Tut Taylor, who lived in the area, was one of the reasons that we established a foothold here now 21 years ago. Well, it was 2004, I believe it was, that we moved to the Wilkesboro area.
So you've been coming to Wilkesboro since when?
I have not. I have only been coming the last 8 or 10 years.
Right.
But interestingly, the whole thing started. Well, we have to go back to the name of the instrument. That really is the. Let's go back to the early history, because it'll all make a lot more sense.
That's right.
This is a great American story. This is a truly American instrument, and it draws from melting pot influences to put it all together in wonderful ways. The first point, I guess, is that this is a cousin of the Hawaiian guitar. It is played with a metal slide. I have one over here.
Right.
And is always played, this particular variation of the instrument is always played with a metal bar, which gives us certain tones, certain sustains, and certain things that differ it from other instruments. It is an acoustic version, if you will, of an electric steel guitar.
Right.
And it is the forerunner of the pedal steel guitar and that sort of thing. Well, it started with immigrant family from Czechoslovakia, moved to the United States, became American citizens, the Dopyera family, Dopyera. And they still support the event, by the way. We just heard from a couple of the members of the family yesterday. Wish we could be there. They're getting on a little bit in years, but they wished us well, and they think very highly of the area.
Right.
And they feel as though they're at home when they're in Wilkesboro having the convention.
Are you saying that the original family who introduced this instrument to America,
yes,
they were they part of that selection process of choosing Wilkes as a gathering place?
In a sense, yes. I'll get to that in a minute. Yeah. So the instrument, it was the Dopyera brothers. If you contract that, D-O-P and B-R-O, you get Dobro. So that is where it came from. Now, they were extremely inventive folks, and they were trying all kinds of things. And I guess this started in the 20s. And so here comes another piece of the pie. Hawaiian music was very popular then, before Hawaii became a state. But Hawaiian music and this whole notion of playing with a slide and all that coincided with what the Dopyera brothers were trying to do. And what they started off, now remember, this is before any kind of electrical instruments. Everything was acoustic. So what they did was they tried to make what actually looks very much like a speaker. And it is a aluminum or metal disc that sits in the well of not just a guitar, but they tried with violins and fiddles and mandolins and other banjos even. They've tried all kinds of things. The point being to make the volume be loud enough to be heard in the acoustic bands that they had of the era.
I see.
That was the whole notion of it. Fascinating that, in fact, the first electric guitar was a electric steel guitar, because this was the notion, let's get this louder so that we can be heard. Well, along the way, a couple of very fascinating things happened and got to be what we sort of think of now as Dobro. They developed sort of two divergent styles of the Dobro guitar. One was what we call a round neck guitar, and that's one that you play like a regular guitar. Well, all right, why would you put a metal cone in a regular guitar if you have a regular guitar? Well, one, to make it louder. But the fascinating thing was the tone changed, and this became, for many folks, this became an all-metal instrument that is used in blues, very popular in blues, and we have a few people who play metal resonators at our event.
Right.
And then the other way that got probably even more attention was the wooden body. It looks like a regular guitar, but it has got this metal cone in the middle of it. And it also, to play well with a bar, we've raised the strings about an inch off of the fretboard. So you can, unlike the round neck, these square necks, the square neck made to withstand the pressure of the increased pressure, are now only played with a bar. And now you had more volume of the Hawaiian sound, but it did another incredible thing. It gave us a whole new kind of sound. And this is the thing that developed into country music and became country dobro, Bashful Brother Oswald being the key figure there, and went on to lead to the development of the electric steel guitar with the pedals and all that sort of thing. It all started from the Hawaiian instrument that the Dopiero brothers were seeking to amplify.
And it created a whole new sound, too, right?
New sound.
I mean, it gave it that type of a blues feel. So this mountain music turned into something that truly was unique.
It was very unique, very expressive, and in the very best sense, truly American. And so, yes, and as you say, it went a lot of different places, but around the Wilkesboro area, this instrument came into the mountains, both in a blues setting and in the, in the square neck Hawaiian style setting. Bashful Brother Oswald, who is from Sevierville, Tennessee, of course, went on to the Grand Ole Opry with Roy Acuff, and that was one of the big initial things. And then another development that was huge was when Josh Graves took the instrument and went with Flatt & Scruggs. And Earl Scruggs taught him some banjo rolls that he then was able to apply to the instrument.
To the dobro.
And yet another whole new sound out of it.
Well, tell me about Tut Taylor, because that type of tie-in had to be there, right?
Absolutely. So Tut Taylor, this is a field where it's still new enough that there are a lot of pioneers. There are a lot of people at our convention who, have gone places that nobody's been before.
Right.
In the first generation, Tut Taylor was one of those. So I think Tut may have originally been from Georgia, but I think he settled here and spent most of his life here. Was very well known for numerous recordings. And he had a unique way of playing the instrument that we have a fella here who learned and from Tut and shows this method. But he plays it with a flat pick, which is like a regular guitar. The majority of us play like a banjo. We put 3-finger picks on. I have some of those here. I don't know if you can see these, but we put finger picks on there to get a little more drive, and we use a motion with the 3 fingers most of us do, to get the sound there. Tut played with a flat pick, did amazing things with it, got sounds that you couldn't get the other way, and so he was just a natural person for this organization to sort of focus on early on.
He was just such an interesting individual. I remember interviewing him before.
Did you?
And I don't know if that was a time period when your group was in town or not, but I think he was 91, 92 at that time.
Yeah, so we would have been probably here at that point. Yeah, unfortunately, we lost Tut a few years ago.
That's right.
But so now, going back, since you brought that up, what happened was back in 2000 even, there weren't as many followers of the Dobro resophonic guitar as there are now. They were kind of few and far between. There were not many makers besides the Dopiero family who had passed it on to the national company, and then finally Gibson Guitar Company had this, and it had been through a number of iterations. They were no longer directly involved. So if you wanted to play the instrument, you didn't have too many places you could go, and people kind of knew, oh, I can call up my friend so-and-so in Cincinnati. He plays, Dobro.
Right.
So I actually even got a call from John Dopieras. That was the son of one of the Dopiera brothers. He lived in Syracuse, New York at the time. I think he may have been an engineer at GE or something like that. I can't remember exactly. But he had a list of people that he knew loved his family's instruments, and he called them up. And he said, hey, we're trying to have a family reunion of these instruments. We want you to come up to our farm and get together and show off your instruments. Well, I didn't realize what a historic and amazing thing it was, so I didn't do it.
Right.
But some of the folks at our group did this, and there's a couple that have been to every one of them since. They had a farm in Pennsylvania, and I think after the first year it might have been in Syracuse, and the next year John Dopiera had bought a farm, and they had it kind of fit so they could have like a camp and have people come in. And a number of people came, and they brought the blues instruments and the country-style instruments. And this went on for about 3 years, and then John had to sell the property. And so at that point, people were saying, where should we go? Where should we move to be central, to be relevant to the community, and also just what makes sense? And so I heard this story last night, and I didn't know all the details, but as I understood, Pammy Lassiter's been doing this for many years, and she's just sort of stopped being our director a year or two ago. But she's very influential in the group, and she's from the Raleigh area. And she was telling us last night that there was a national Dobro contest in Dunn, North Carolina. And so they said, well, if all these people can come to that, maybe they can come to ResoGat in Wilkesboro. And not only that, Tut Taylor is there, and we could maybe get him involved. And so that's how it happened. We moved. And I would say that the support of the community, the support of the Holiday Inn Convention Center Express have just kept us here. Everything's just fallen into place.
Right. So the musical community here, which is rich, right?
Very rich.
So you're getting the support from them, the community. Do you think that just that profile unto itself, and then of course with Tut Taylor and some other people that enjoy this instrument, by them being here, MerleFest being a place that attracts people,
yes.
And so is there something about this area from your group's observation that nurtures all types of music that has a sound that's a bit more soulful?
I think so. I'm originally from Boston, Massachusetts. I've lived in South Carolina now for more than half my life. There is a certain soul of music. The banjo players from around Shelby, North Carolina, that tips into South Carolina a little bit too. The musicians from the mountain areas or near the mountain areas, up the road, a Deep Gap and Doc Watson.
Sure.
Merle played some great, slide guitar. And so, yes, I think there's no question that it exudes, the musical personality comes through. And I think that's a huge plus to attracting people from other states. We know this is the epicenter of this great music, so let's go there. And I think, yes, indeed.
So you feel that when you're in the community, you just feel the support, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's nice. I hear that from a lot of musicians because the professional aspect of music here, not everybody's aware of, but there are a lot of session musicians that live in Wilkes County. They're off to Nashville. People just don't realize that that's part of the environment, but it is.
I think that's a good point there. I think sometimes people in a community that have a resource like that take it for granted, because if you go to a barbecue and there's a band playing and it's somebody who could be playing in Nashville, you get accustomed to that.
Right.
And but you have so much of it around here.
I think one of the unique parts of Wilkes County is there's a lot of entertainment going on. I mean, obviously MerleFest brings people from all over the country, but there are lots of concerts, and you may go to a concert with the Kruger Brothers, and it's in Wilkesboro at the pavilion there, and it's a free event or a sponsored event, and you have that experience, and then they go travel in Europe and they fill out a stadium. So it's
kind of amazing.
That's right. So you've got that experience, and even to with your group here, I stopped over this morning, and I don't do it every year, but I have 3 or 4 times over the years. But you and I were in a room, and Vivian Hopkins was there, and a whole group of people, and there were stories being told about this wood that obviously is quite precious in making dobros, right?
Indeed.
Or making the instruments that we're talking about. We can't say dobro, right? They're not actually
Yes.
dobro.
I think you can use them interchangeably.
Yes. So there was a story there that I want you to kind of reshare that story a little bit now, since you're the expert, and talk about why they would be so excited about a particular type of wood for a luthier to craft one of these instruments.
That's a great question, and the story is a little long. Our leader currently, Todd Borger, who's from the Raleigh area, he told a story this morning, and I've heard it before, but they were having a seminar about different woods and how they affect. This is it's such an art to make any musical instrument, and this particular instrument, it has so much. I guess alchemy is the word. I don't know. You don't know how people do what they do, but they sense it and they know. And it's a combination of metal and wood together. And so, will this metal work? Will this resonator work? Will this wood work? I don't know how they do it, but that's why we have our artists and luthiers who do it, and they are wonderful at it. So there was a roundtable discussion about that this morning, and Todd mentioned an instrument that he has that when he heard the story about the wood, it brought tears to his eyes. And to make a long story short, the wood, and the builder was sitting right next to him, so we had the whole circle there. The story was that the wood had been cut. It had been hand sewn. They could tell that it was cut before 1840. So they knew it was very old wood, as mahogany. And there was a period of time from 1840, I guess, to about 1890, I think they said, when it wasn't accounted for. Nobody really knew where it was. In 1890, it went into a Catholic church in Indiana, and they felt it may have been used on the second story as rafters, walking boards, as they called them, because there were no nail marks or beautiful wood. Long story short, the church was rebuilt, was it 1912, something like that, and the wood became available. Somebody got the wood, and one of our folks who actually crafts beautiful resonator guitar bars like the one I showed you there, recognized his neighbor had gotten it, and he recognized that the wood was kind of special. Long story short, there was some other wood besides the mahogany in there that the whole thing got auctioned off, and they threw away the mahogany, which is what this luthier wanted. So the luthier ended up getting the wood, and long story short, they said this would make a beautiful instrument. It has history. It was in a place of worship. It's gone through so many iterations, and it is absolutely astounding. The instruments that have been made of this wood have been really great. It's well aged, and so yes, I think more than I can express, my emotions about the wood, the luthiers and the people who acquire them. It's a passion. It really is. Sometimes you get them and they're not so good, but I think the ones that do it a lot, they can kind of tell.
Right.
And so
having the right ingredients is always important in a recipe, right?
Isn't it though?
So here we are talking about this wood. I've interviewed luthiers before, and they're always talking about that voice. I'm not a luthier, but I feel like I've talked to enough people who are that I understand the concept. I still have no earthly idea how they hear it, what she's saying. I don't know. They do. But then you hear the instrument being performed on stage.
Yes.
And you're just wowed by it.
I think it's art more than craft, or as much as craft, as much as construction. Sure, you have to know techniques.
Right.
But there is, as I said before, there's an alchemy. There's a mysterious way of putting it together that the good folks know, and they don't seem to have too many misses once they get the hang of it.
How's your life better? Not only being a musician, but being a musician that utilizes an instrument with such a interesting history, but a narrow group of performers. So we're talking about an instrument that a lot of people could buy one, right? A lot of people have access to them, but they don't. So you're part of this. You're part of a special club, right?
Yes, it does feel a bit unique. I think the instrument, when, the way most of us play it, is very expressive like the human voice. Violin or fiddle is probably the closest in that you can, you don't have frets or a keyboard where you only can get sort of one tone. You can get a whole range of tonality out of the instrument. And so that gives it a voice that's maybe a little more like a human voice. And I think, we talk about how we relate to the Wilkesboro community. One of the things we started doing is we go out to a few of the assisted living homes in the area on Saturday, and we take, and this is very unusual to be able to have 6 resonator or Dobro players and maybe one guitar and go out and play. We have done this, not much rehearsal. We kind of wave at each other. We know each other from the gathering, but we don't play together. To see the looks on the faces of the people that are out there when we're playing, like, I love that, or that goes to the heart of your question there. It's when you can project through the instrument your feelings and communicate with someone, then you've done the right thing.
It's a little bit like if you're I love jazz. And
me too.
And to me, there's nothing quite as free-formed and excellent as jazz, because it can go from people who were playing together that have never met before, and the next thing you know, they're eliciting feelings and emotions in the people who are sitting around listening. And I think the Dobro is a little bit like that, isn't it? I heard someone tell me once, we were talking. It was after a concert. I think it was at the Blumenthal, and it was a Django Reinhardt.
Oh yeah,
a Django Reinhardt session, and the music that was performed there, and just the sounds. She said, I couldn't stop being emotional. She says, I cried. I said, would it bring back a sad memory? She says, no, it was the most beautiful thing. And she I think the Dobro does a bit of that as well, doesn't it?
I think it does. I think it, it's an interesting combination of what people have heard and maybe not recognized, or maybe they grew up with the instrument, and, if Grandpa played it and you hear it, it might be, exactly what it is. But there's another maybe 50% of folks who they've heard it, but they don't know. And then they see one in person, and they see somebody play it well, and they're like, they're that sound. It's the same kind of thing. And it is a difficult instrument. It's difficult to play, for example, in a jazz setting. You've got to be, not only do you have to know your jazz, but you really have to know your instrument, and technically it is more difficult, I would say, than more like a violin probably. There's only a handful of great jazz violinists around, and I think that's probably true for this instrument also.
Of course. Can you imagine your life without this instrument?
It'd be tough. I came to it, as many of the folks did, I came to it after playing other instruments, so I guess I had a bit of the musical bent or affinity. But I started off with that sort of shock and awe, amazement, seeing one, hearing them. Fortunately, I went back to the generation where I could see the great original players, Bachelor Brother Oswald, Mike Aldridge, Josh Graves, Jerry Douglas early on, and see these folks. Mike Aldridge, I don't know if I mentioned, but I was able to see them up close and see them in band situations and just, wow, this is amazing what they're doing. And it took me a while before I got the guts to try it, and it took me a much longer time to be able to do anything with it. But it's the nature of the beast.
Wow. Well, that sounds like a wonderful story, Larry, and you're doing it here in Wilkes County, and you're obviously part of the culture now because it's thought of as something that happens every year. I think maybe this was the fourth one I stepped in to say hi today, so I've gotten used to it, and a lot of other people talk about it as well. You know, one of the interesting things, even the people at the hotel, they were talking about it. So they really enjoyed hearing those sounds, just walking down the hall, and they could hear them, and it was different than any other type of instrument. So that's good.
It is indeed, yes, and they've been great to work with, and that it just makes the pieces of the puzzle fit together even better to have that kind of support.
Before you share a little bit of the sounds of this great instrument, give me a prognosis of the future. Just kind of look out there a little bit. What's the future of the organization, the instrument? I mean, do we have growth going on? Are more people getting involved? Should there be more people involved?
Well, that's a wonderful question, and in fact, so this is a very informal group. We have a very there's no admission if anybody comes to any of the events. We don't charge any admission. We do it for love of the instrument. We do it only on donations, and anyone is welcome to sit in on any of the sessions. We welcome the community to come in and see what we're doing. We have a concert, in fact, tonight that will feature some world-class players over there at the Holiday Inn, and we open the doors and say, come on in. And while it is true that since we do start midweek and run through the weekend, we have more of an older, such as myself, more of an older group of people that come to this thing. We do have youngsters. We have actually a couple of folks that play with two family bands where they're youngsters that are here, and they've won awards already all over the country for their proficiency, both as bands, as family bands, overall, and also on the Dobro itself. We have also we've helped to establish a scholarship fund in Pammy Lassiter's name at East Tennessee State University, where they do a lot of music and American music stuff that enables youngsters to attend our event, or a scholarship that enables them to get their travel expenses and that sort of thing, so that I think the interest and the future are very bright. We, of course, love to see more youngsters at the event, and we wonder about, should we do things to make it more easy for folks to come. But I think
is it a good idea?
I think it's a wonderful idea.
So if there was if there were some friendly people that had an audience, and we could invite, or they could invite young people to contact your organization, and maybe there could be something special for next season, because we're literally, when people hear this,
would love it.
That would be a good thing.
We would love it. We did talk, before we started thinking about going into assisted living, and we've got all this town here. Let's bond with the community even more. We also thought about schools, except this is not the time of year to have a school program, but we certainly would love to do that. And there are some places where it's being done, but once our group disbands at the end of our half a week or week of activities, people go to Maine and Indiana and Florida and Texas, and so it's not as easy to get a group of us together.
Right. But during this special time of the year, it is something to do.
It is.
All right. Well, Larry, this has been a fantastic visit.
Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
It has been great. I think maybe you can share a little bit of the sound of this incredible instrument.
I would like to do that.
And then we'll probably see you over there tonight for the concert.
Looking forward to it. Should be really great. Our honoree this year is a North Carolinian, Frank Poindexter.
Oh, Frank, yes.
Every year we honor somebody we think has made lots of contributions, and he's certainly one. He's the uncle of the Rice brothers, Tony Rice, and he's played on the Opry, and he's played with them all over, and Deeper Shade of Blue is his current band, and he's just a legend, and he's right sort of in the backyard here, so it's wonderful.
Well, he's a great guy for sure.
He may want to talk to you about space aliens too. I think I heard some of that.
A little story about Frank. We did a special together, a broadcast special for our show Life in the Carolinas, and he most certainly introduced the aliens to about 800 people that night.
Wonderful.
In the audience. So
if you never saw one of these, you might think that this was alien induced. I think that's a possibility. So, while this looks shape-wise like a regular guitar, you'll notice a couple of very unusual things. The first, of course, is this resonator. This is the cover plate, and down underneath the cover plate, there is an aluminum, this one is a spun aluminum cone that is the speaker that changes the sound and also projects the volume, makes it louder. There's what we call a spider bridge, which I think is cast iron. It has a kind of a conventional sort of a bridge, but it sits on that metal, and the spider sits on the resonator, and that very delicate little combination there is what creates a lot of the sound of the instrument. The other thing you would notice here is that the strings are way too high up off of this square, not round neck, so that you could not fret this. This is not a guitar. The other variant of it, the round neck, is designed to be played like a regular guitar. Often those are metal. These are often wood. And so that's the sound of the instrument. Typically, we, unlike most guitar players, we tune usually to an open tuning. So that's a major chord. You might tune to a 6th chord or a minor chord, depending on what effect you want. Why would you do that? Because you're playing with a metal bar that makes it more difficult to get to certain notes. So are you able to see that? So there's a C major chord. If I wanted a minor, I have to get this note in. So I can do it by rapidly moving the bar. Or I could do it by doing what's called a slant, where I get the 2 notes of the minor chord. But you've got to use a little different tricks. So the main 2 approaches that we see now with this instrument, one is the sort of banjo approach. That's what Josh Graves learned from Earl Scruggs and just set the world on fire. And that would be something like this. That's basically banjo playing without a drone string on the dobro. The other sort of thing, and a lot of folks put this together, as did Josh Graves, is the more Hawaiian style, where you really taking advantage of the bar to get expressive sounds. And so you might have something like this. So that's more of the Hawaiian style, and those 2 can be combined. A lot of the younger folks, the folks that we're so excited to see coming into play a lot of single note work. It's very complicated, a little hard for me to do anymore with my fingers, but they will play notes on here as fast as a guitar player might, and stuff, very, very quick stuff, and almost any tune. They can play jazz stuff because they can play as many notes as you want in there. And so that's kind of that's maybe a little different than the other 2 things. If you put it all together, and then you have a great player.
Oh, that sounds great. Well, Larry, I think if you could go back and just do some of that Hawaiian sound, because I think if you do that loud enough, that it might create some waves over the W. Kerr Scott Reservoir.
Okay. Whoop, I forgot how to play it. I'm sorry, a little rusty on that tune, but the point is that is a Hawaiian tune that Bashful Brother Oswald played. And in Western country music, it became known as the Dobro chimes. I think in Hawaii it's called the Maui chimes or something like that. But I didn't play it exactly the way I wanted to, but you get the idea there. True Hawaiian music brought into the mainstream.
That's fantastic. Larry, it's been great having you on Life in Wilkes, and we hope your group keeps coming back to Wilkes County for many years to come.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you to the community for having us.
You're certainly welcome.
Thank you for spending time with us on Life in Wilkes. We value you as a viewer and appreciate when you share the show with your friends and family. Be sure to bookmark our channel and join us again on the next episode of Life in Wilkes.